Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about road trips through the Appalachian backroads. If you've ever thought about taking the scenic route through the Appalachian backroads, this might change your mind. But before we begin, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now let's start. Nate and I had been on the road since sunrise, running on gas station coffee so bad it tasted like burnt dirt and the kind of excuses you only make in your 20s. Truth was, neither of us had much waiting for us back home. Crappy jobs, half-finished plans, families that didn't really get us. We were mad at everything we didn't have answers for, so when I said, "What if we just drive?" Nate didn't even blink. We threw a couple of duffel bags in the back, packed a cooler with cheap beer and whatever snacks were left on the truck stop shelf, and hit the highway before either of us could talk ourselves out of it. For a while, it actually felt good. The Appalachians rolled out like waves in every direction, those blue-green ridges folding over each other forever. The kind of view you don't even bother taking pictures of because a photo would ruin it. The air felt different too, clean, sharp, like it didn't belong to the same world as the parking lots and strip malls we'd crawled out of. We cranked the windows down, let the wind slap our faces, and let the road eat up everything we didn't want to think about. For a few hours, I swear it felt like freedom. By late afternoon, the highway bled into something older. Two narrow lanes curling tighter with every mile, the trees leaning in like they were holding secrets. The GPS held on for a while, then blinked gray with a big no signal, like it was giving up on us. I remember looking at Nate, waiting for him to panic a little, but he just shrugged and pulled out this crumpled paper map from the glove box. A real map, like something out of an old glove compartment commercial. It had coffee stains on it and one corner missing, but he spread it out like he was Magellan. "Seriously?" I said. "What?" "It works." He shot back, tracing lines like he actually knew where they went. That was mistake number one. We rolled past a sign barely clinging to its post, the metal eaten through with rust. Follow Creek, 12 miles. Never heard of it. Neither had Nate, but 12 miles sounded fine. A town meant gas, maybe a diner, maybe a motel with plastic-wrapped remotes. The sun was already sinking behind the ridges, and the road had started curling sharp, blind bends, swallowing and spitting us out like a throat trying to choke something down. That's when we saw the houses, if you can call them houses. Roofs caved in like crushed skulls, porches tilting so far they looked drunk, paint stripped down to bone-gray boards. Some perched on stone foundations that had slipped into the earth, like they were sliding towards something none of us wanted to see. They looked wrong. Not just old, abandoned in a way that didn't feel like time, more like they'd been given up on. The silence in the car stretched until it felt solid. "You sure that map's worth anything?" I asked, staring hard at the road, because I didn't want to stare at those houses anymore. Nate smirked, didn't look up. "You're the one driving, man." He said it like a joke, but neither of us laughed. Then we saw the second sign, Follow Creek, 12 miles. Same rust. Same bent corner, same bullet holes punched through the letters like an infection. I slowed just enough to glance at Nate. "Didn't we just?" "Yeah," he said, voice flat now. We kept going. The third sign hit harder. We'd been driving another 15 minutes. The odometer said we'd gone far enough, but the road didn't change. The same blacktop curling, the same trees squeezing in like ribs. The third sign read the same thing. Fallow Creek, 12 miles. That's when Nate folded the map and tossed it on the dash like it had betrayed him. He didn't say what we were both thinking, that this wasn't bad directions anymore. I pressed the gas harder. The road dipped into a hollow, the air turning damp and cold, like we'd driven into someone's basement. My ears popped from the pressure, and when the road climbed back out, it curled into switchback so sharp my stomach flipped. That's when I saw him. Just beyond the tree line, thin as a post. Head tilted too far to one side, like his neck was broken and nobody told him. His arms hung wrong, like empty sleeves in a breeze. I couldn't see a face, just a pale oval floating where it should have been. We passed him in seconds. The trees swallowed him like he'd never been there. "Did you?" I started, but Nate's voice cut through mine. "Don't." His voice wasn't steady anymore. "Just drive." Neither of us spoke for miles. When the fourth sign appeared, I didn't even slow down, just stared at it as it slid through the headlights. Those same words burned into my brain. Father Creek, 12 miles. Something cracked inside me when the fuel light blinked on. I tapped the gauge like it was lying, but the needle didn't move. It had hovered just above empty for an hour, then dropped like a stone. "Can't be right," Nate muttered, but he sounded like he didn't believe it. The road was different now. I could feel it. The pavement rippled under the tires like something alive was shifting underneath. Cracks split wider than they should, black seams like open mouths. The trees bent lower, their branches knuckling against the roof with a slow, scraping drag. Then, headlights ahead, relief hit so fast it hurt. They swept wide around a curve, golden beams cutting through the dark. I almost laughed. Another car, finally. I blinked. Gone. No engine noise, no taillights, just the same empty strip of asphalt stretching into nowhere. The next sign wasn't rusted. It had been hacked by hand, letters gouged deep with something sharp. "Stop, turn back. Stop, turn back." I slammed the brakes so hard Nate hit the dash with his palm. The tires screamed. "What the hell?" The sound hit before he finished. A thud on the trunk. Heavy. Wet. Nate spun, cranking the rear window down. The glass groaned as it dropped, and a blast of cold air knifed through the car, carrying something foul and metallic, like pennies in a puddle. Then the tail lights lit it up. At first I thought it was a man crawling out of the road. But its limbs were wrong. Too long, too many joints, bending like hinges someone installed in the wrong places. It unfolded slow, like a spider stretching after sleep. Its head sagged low, face turned to the blacktop, like it didn't want us to see it yet. When it started moving toward the bumper, I stopped thinking. I floored it. The car fishtailed, gravel spitting as the speedometer jumped. The next curve came too fast. I took it blind, praying the tires held. Nate slammed against the door, clutching the handle like he'd jump out if I slowed. Then we saw lights, a glow up ahead, soft and golden, spilling like sunlight after rain. A town. Had to be. But as we rounded the curve, the lights dissolved, gone, like smoke in water. The road stretched out darker than ever. The trees leaned in tight, their limbs knitting overhead like ribs closing around us. The rear window was still open, and from the back seat, so close I felt heat bloom against my ear, a voice dragged itself through broken teeth and whispered one word. "Stop." I drove blind, heart jackhammering, the wheels slick under my hands. The road pitched like it wanted to throw us off, then widened sudden, yawning open into a stretch of blacktop that spat us out onto something new. A sign flashed in the beams, "Exit 64A, 81. I almost sobbed when the green hit the headlights. I took the ramp so fast, the tires lifted for a breathless second, then slammed hard on fresh pavement. My first stop was this gas station on a lonely stretch of highway in southern West Virginia. I'd been driving for about 3 hours already and still had 5 more to go before I made it to my friend's place in Kentucky. Honestly, just me and my thoughts. It felt like a break from all the noise I'd left behind. From a distance, the gas station looked dead. Not just quiet, dead. One old, leaning sign out front, 2 gas pumps with paint peeling like sunburned skin, and a rusted canopy sagging so badly I wondered if it would cave in during the next storm. If there'd been any other option, I wouldn't have stopped. But my gas light had been glaring at me for the last 30 miles, and there was no telling when I'd find another place out here. Pulling in, the gravel crunched under my tires, loud in the silence. No other cars, no music leaking from speakers, no hum of conversation. Just empty. The inside wasn't much better. The air felt heavy, like a room that hadn't seen an open window in years. It smelled faintly of oil and something else I couldn't name. Maybe old wood that had soaked up too much time. A single fluorescent light buzzed above the counter, casting this weak, sickly glow that barely touched the corners of the room. Behind the counter sat a man with a newspaper spread out in front of him. Gray hair cut short, skin that looked like leather. He didn't look up when I came in, didn't even twitch. Just turned a page like I was invisible. I cleared my throat. "Pumps still work?" He nodded without lifting his head. "Cool. Any faster way through the mountains? GPS keeps rerouting me." That's when he looked up. Just for a second. His eyes were this weird, pale color, almost washed out, like there was nothing behind them. I don't know why that hit me so hard, but it did. "To the main road," he said. His voice was low and flat, almost like he was whispering to himself, or like he didn't want anyone else to hear. I laughed because what else was I supposed to do with that? "Yeah, sure," I said, trying to make it sound like a joke. Paid for the gas, gave him a nod he didn't return, and walked out. The pump was slow, clattering with every pull of the trigger, like it was struggling to keep up. I kept glancing at the station windows while I waited. He didn't move, just sat there behind that counter, head down again like I'd never been there at all. First thing I noticed when I got back in the car was my phone. Signal was gone. Not weak, gone. Just an empty icon where the bars should be. I held it up toward the windshield like some idiot who thinks an extra inch of altitude is going to fix the problem. Nothing. Tried twisting it this way and that, still nothing. Whatever. Dead zones happen. At least I had the map downloaded. Even without data, the little arrow should keep moving. So I started the engine and pulled out, saying under my breath, half joking, "Stick to the main road." For the next hour, I barely saw another car. The road just wound deeper and deeper into the mountains, curling like a snake. Trees on both sides, thick and tall, closing in until it felt like the whole world was green and gray. Every so often, I'd pass a rusted mailbox with no house in sight, or a dirt track disappearing into the woods. It was the kind of place where you could vanish and no one would know for months. Did I miss the turn? Didn't even realize it right away. The GPS froze, and when I glanced down, the little blue arrow was just spinning in place like it was as lost as I was. I slowed down, scanning for a spot to pull off and turn around, but there was nothing. Just rock wall on one side and a drop-off on the other. So I kept going, telling myself the road would widen up eventually. That's when I saw the first car. It was parked at an angle on the right shoulder. Driver's door wide open, like whoever had been inside stepped out mid-thought and never came back. The paint was faded, the tires caked with mud. I slowed, instinct kicking in, expecting someone to come out of the trees and wave me down. But there was no one, just the car. As I passed, I looked inside. The keys were still in the ignition. I drove on, telling myself they'd gone for help. Maybe there was a house nearby I couldn't see through the trees. Still, the hair on the back of my neck stayed standing, and my hands gripped the wheel tighter. 15 minutes later, I saw another one. Same thing, driver's door open, empty. By now, my stomach had gone tight. My knuckles were white on the wheel. I wanted to turn around so badly, but there was still no place to do it. The road was narrowing, curling tighter, like it was funneling me somewhere I didn't want to go. Then came the third car. I don't even have words for the way my chest felt when I saw it. 3 cars, all abandoned the same way within a few miles. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't coincidence. I pressed harder on the gas, watching the trees blur past. And that's when I saw him, sitting in the center of the road, just standing there, facing me, arms hanging loose at his sides, head tilted slightly, like he was trying to figure out what I was. I hit the brakes so hard the seatbelt slammed across my chest. My first thought was maybe he needed help. My second thought was that he didn't. I cracked the window an inch and called out, "You okay?" Nothing, not a blink, not a twitch. 5 seconds passed. Then I threw the car in reverse and floored it. Gravel spit out from under the tires. He didn't move. Didn't even turn his head as I backed up so fast I nearly clipped the guardrail. When I finally dropped it into drive and gunned it, I checked the mirror once. He was gone. The next 30 minutes were a blur. Blind turns, Gravel's shoulders that didn't look safe enough to trust. The sky was dimming fast, like someone had started pulling the plug on daylight. Every curve, I expected him to be there, or worse. More figures, waiting. Finally, I found a pull-off, wide enough to turn without tumbling into the ravine. My hands were shaking as I spun the wheel, gravel spraying everywhere. I was halfway through the turn when my headlights swept across the clearing ahead. That's when I saw them. All three cars, parked side by side now, neat as if someone had lined them up on purpose. Their doors were closed. I didn't even think. My body moved before my brain did, slammed the gas so hard the tires screamed, fishtailing before they caught. I didn't look back, not once. Just kept my eyes locked on the thin gray ribbon of road, like staring hard enough would keep it from twisting into something worse. When I finally saw the lights of the highway again, I didn't stop for anything. Not gas, not food, not even when my hands cramped around the wheel. I drove until I hit the state line and found a real town with real lights. Then I pulled over, just sat there, shaking so hard I couldn't get the keys out of the ignition for a solid minute. It's been months now. I still don't know what I saw. I don't even try to explain it anymore. I was 20 when it happened. That summer I'd planned this road trip with my best friend. 3 states, a bunch of small towns, and a weekend in Nashville to wrap it up. We'd been hyping it for months. A week before we were supposed to leave, he bailed. Said money was tight and promised we'd do it next year. I almost canceled, but I'd already taken the time off, and honestly, I needed the break. So I figured, screw it. I'll go alone. The plan was simple. Take the scenic route, avoid the interstate, and stick to those back roads no one uses anymore. Appalachia had always fascinated me. The mountains, the forgotten little towns that barely show up on maps. It felt like a chance to see something real before it disappeared completely. For most of the day, it was exactly what I wanted. Rolling hills, winding 2-lane roads, towns so small they had 1 traffic light, and diners with handwritten menus on chalkboards. I stopped for pie at a place called Ruby's, and the waitress called me hone 3 times before I even sat down. I barely touched the highway. It was slower, sure, but it felt like the kind of trip you're supposed to take when you're 20 and trying to convince yourself you're living life right. By late afternoon, though, I realized I'd screwed up. The last gas station I'd seen was nearly an hour behind me, and my gauge had dipped into the danger zone. I grabbed my phone to check for stations nearby, but the signal kept flickering until it disappeared completely. Dead. The road kept narrowing, like it was being swallowed by the woods. No signs, no mile markers, just cracked pavement stretching into nowhere. I kept driving, telling myself something would turn up. After 20 minutes, I finally saw it. Ransom Hollow, 6 miles. Never heard of it, didn't care. If it had gas, it was my new favorite place. The turnoff was worse. Barely wide enough for 2 cars. Asphalt broken and eaten up by weeds. Branches scraped across my roof like nails as I eased into the curve. The farther I went, the thicker the trees grew, pressing in like they were trying to block the sky. My phone screen stayed blank no matter how many times I refreshed. Just when I started wondering if I'd made a huge mistake, the forest opened. Calling it a town was generous. Maybe 8 houses, all hunched against the road like they were hiding from something. Their windows were black, curtains pulled tight. No cars in the driveways. At the far end stood a squat building with a peeling green awning and 2 old gas pumps out front. I pulled in, relieved enough to feel it in my chest. The pumps didn't take cards, so I headed inside. The door gave this long, dry creak, like it was warning someone I was there. The air hit me with a mix of dust and something sweet and sour, like fruit left out too long. The shelves leaned under faded goods, brands I didn't recognize, labels bleached and curling at the edges. A man stood behind the counter, thin, maybe mid-60s. His skin had this dull, waxy tone, like candle wax left in the sun too long. He didn't blink when his eyes landed on me, just stared. "Hey," I said, trying for casual. "You take cash?" No answer, not even a nod. Just those eyes, fixed on me, like he was memorizing every line of my face. Okay. I pulled out a 20. 20 on the pump, still nothing. No words, no movement. He might as well have been carved out of wood. I set the bill on the counter, muttered thanks, and got out without waiting for change. Before I climbed back into my car, I glanced through the window. He was still there, still staring. I filled up fast and pulled back onto the road, telling myself he was just some old guy who didn't like outsiders. But 20 minutes later, that shaky relief started to wear off. The road didn't end. It just kept looping through the same forest. Tight walls of green, leaning fences, ditches filled with dark water. Then I noticed something worse. I'd passed the same warped oak twice, the same busted fence post leaning at the same angle. I was sure of it. I slowed, scanning for side roads. Nothing. Just the one I was on, curling endlessly through trees. My stomach knotted. Maybe I'd missed a turn. I kept driving. Then I saw headlights behind me. At first I felt relieved. Another car meant I wasn't completely alone. But when I checked again, the lights were closer. Too close. Practically stuck to my bumper. I sped up. They did too. The curves came fast and blind, tires squealing as I took them sharp. I kept glancing in the mirror, trying to make out the driver, but the lights were too bright, glaring white. No horn, no attempt to pass. Just glued to me like they were tethered. Finally, the forest broke and my stomach dropped. It was the same town, same houses, same gas station, and inside, behind the glass, the same man, standing exactly where I left him, still staring. I didn't stop. I blew past, gravel spitting, and the headlights followed. I drove harder than I ever have, gripping the wheel so tight my fingers cramped. I prayed for a main road, any road, but the miles didn't matter. The trees never ended. Then the headlights vanished. 1 second they were there, the next my mirror showed nothing but black. For a moment I thought I'd lost them. Then something flickered between the trees. People. At first I thought I was imagining it. Shapes between branches, tricks of light. But then I saw them clearly. Figures standing just off the shoulder, perfectly still. Men, women, even kids. All facing the road. All watching me. Their faces were pale. Too pale. Eyes wide, mouths open like they were screaming, but silent. I stopped looking after the third one. I kept my eyes locked on the road and drove until my gas light came on. That's when real panic hit. I was out of time. I'd been flooring it for what felt like an hour and got nowhere. No phone signal, no help. The needle was dropping by the mile. Then the trees broke again, and I knew before I saw the sign. Ransom Hollow. I slowed without meaning to. The gas station was waiting, awnings sagging, windows black. The man was still inside, a pale shape behind the glass. But something was different. The metal cash box was gone. In its place, a piece of paper propped against the window. The words were scrawled in jagged black marker. "You can't leave until you've been hollowed." My hand shook so bad I almost dropped the gear shift. Then the headlights flared in my mirror again, brighter than before, barreling toward me fast. I slammed the gas pedal down. I don't know how far I drove after that. The road twisted and twisted until my eyes burned and my body shook from adrenaline. Then, like snapping out of a nightmare, I saw it. The interstate. Daylight was breaking when I hit the highway. My tank was past empty. I pulled into the first truck stop I saw and sat there for half an hour before I could even move. I looked for Ransom Hollow later, Maps, online, everywhere, it doesn't exist. I came up with this brilliant idea, a solo road trip, just me and the car. No big destination. I figured I'd hit the Appalachian backroads, take the scenic routes, maybe find some quiet little towns where time moves slower. In my head, it sounded perfect. Scenic overlooks, maybe an antique shop or two where the cash register still makes that sharp metallic clank, and some greasy spoon diner that serves pancakes the size of hubcap. I didn't even tell anyone where I was going, not because I wanted to be mysterious or anything. It just felt good to unplug. I was tired of sharing every move I made. Lately, it felt like the noise never stopped. Notifications bleeding into my sleep. My phone buzzing so often I started checking it, even when it didn't. So I tossed a bag in the trunk, filled the tank, and hit the road. The first few hours were exactly what I needed. 2-lane roads curling like lazy snakes through hills, and trees so thick you couldn't see past the first row. Every so often, I'd spot an old barn leaning sideways in a field, its roof caving in like a broken spine. I drove with the windows down, arm hanging out, just soaking in the silence. Well, not silence exactly, just no people, and that felt good. For a while, I passed the occasional truck, but only for a second before it vanished in the mirror. Then the phone signal started dropping. 4 bars, 2, none. I wasn't worried. I downloaded offline maps, felt pretty proud of myself for that. But the longer I drove, the more the road stopped making sense. The map said the road should curve left, but it didn't. Street names disappeared, roads branched where there weren't supposed to be any. It was like the GPS was trying to keep up with something that kept shifting under me. An hour went by without a gas station, a store, or even another car. That's when I saw the sign, if you could call it that. Just a rusted sheet of metal nailed to a post, edges eaten by weather, with one word painted in peeling black letters: Brenner. No arrow, no distance, just a name. And it wasn't on my map. I told myself it was fine. I needed gas anyway. Maybe Brenner was one of those forgotten towns you read about online. The kind with a single diner where the coffee tastes like burned rubber, but the pie could win awards. So I turned and followed the sign. The road narrowed as it climbed, trees crowding in like they wanted to swallow the car whole. The branches laced together overhead until it felt like I was driving through a tunnel. My stomach knotted a little, but I told myself it was just because I was hungry. By the time the incline leveled out, I saw the town, or what was left of it. One short street lined with buildings sagging against each other, windows smashed or boarded up. No cars, no lights, no movement. Just a strip of pavement cracked like old skin, and buildings that looked like they hadn't heard laughter in 50 years. Then I noticed the smoke, a thin column rising from a chimney at the far end of the street. So, someone was here. I parked next to what used to be a gas station. The pumps were still standing, hoses drooping like dead snakes. The windows were gone, weeds clawing through the floor inside. That's when it hit me. Not just quiet, empty. Dead quiet. No wind, no birds, no bugs, not even the hum of a distant engine. Just me, breathing, and the sound of my own shoes crunching gravel. I told myself this wasn't weird. People live in forgotten places all the time. They like being left alone. So I headed toward the building with the smoke. It looked like an old diner, the kind you see in black and white photos. Dull metal siding streaked with rust, a bell above the door. When I pushed it open, the bell didn't tinkle, it shrieked, high-pitched and sharp, like it was tearing through the air. Inside, dust coated everything, tables, stools, even the napkin holders, everything except the counter. The counter was spotless, not a smudge, not a speck. And behind it stood a man, tall and wiry, clothes faded like they'd lived a few extra lives, button-up shirt, suspenders hanging off bony shoulders. His eyes were pale, so pale they looked like someone had drained all the color out of them. He just stared at me, didn't move, didn't blink, like he was measuring me. Lost? His voice rasped like metal scraping metal. "Yeah," I said, forcing a laugh. "I was trying to get back to the main highway. There's no back," he said. Then he smiled. And it wasn't the kind of smile you give a stranger. It was the kind you give when you know something they don't. "Alas iwikish bayol." I laughed again, too loud, like he was joking, but his lips barely moved. "You can't stay out there," he said. "Gets dark quick." I glanced out the doorway, and he wasn't wrong. The sky had shifted in the 5 minutes I'd been inside. Heavy clouds pooling over the hills, shadows stretching long and jagged across the street. "Is there a main road nearby?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away, just reached under the counter, slow, and set down a ring of keys. Old things, big and rusted, dangling from a bent loop. The clink was so loud it made me flinch. "Or the cabins?" he said. "Best lock the door before dark." "I'm not staying," I said, stepping back. His smile didn't move. "You are?" The bell above the door chimed behind me. Someone else had come in. Big guy, broad shoulders, hat pulled low so I couldn't see his face. Then a woman slipped through behind him, her dress the color of bone, her bare feet leaving wet prints on the tile. Then another, and another, until the diner was full, silent, staring, faces pale and hollow, like something had scooped them out and propped them back up. I ran. The keys hit the floor with a metallic clatter as I shoved through the door and bolted for my car. The air outside felt thick, like running through water. Behind me came the scrape of shoes, then the pounding of feet. Fast, too fast. I dove into the driver's seat, jammed the key into the ignition, and begged out loud, "Come on!" The engine groaned, coughed, then roared to life. In the rear view, they were there, lined across the street, still as statues. The man with the keys raised his hand and waved. The road coiled back through the trees like it wanted to keep me, but I didn't lift my foot off the gas until the hills thinned and my phone buzzed with a single bar. I almost cried when it did. Later, I checked the map, scrolled every inch. Brenner wasn't there. The whole trip was Mason's idea. He'd been hyping it for weeks, sending us links to blog posts about hidden Appalachian gems, photos of old wooden bridges, screenshots of winding mountain roads. Honestly, I didn't even think twice before saying yes. I'd been stuck in a routine that felt like beige wallpaper. This sounded like a reset button. We loaded up Eric's Honda Civic, a car that looked like it had barely survived college, and crammed the trunk with a cooler of gas station snacks and cheap beer. That was the plan. No big expectations. Just get out there and see what happens. The start was perfect. The sky was open, mountains rolling like a watercolor painting, valleys so wide they made you feel small, in a good way. Every turn gave us something postcard-worthy. For the first 100 miles, I didn't even care that my phone was flashing no service, like a warning light. Eric sat in the passenger seat telling jokes so bad they looped back around to funny. Mason kept bouncing between playlists, trying to set the perfect road trip vibe. For a while, I thought, this is it. This is exactly what I needed. By early afternoon, the vibe changed. We'd gone way off the main highway Mason's doing. He swore the GPS was leading us to tourist traps and that the real beauty was on the roads nobody talks about. At first, I bought it. Then the asphalt started looking less like a road and more like a suggestion. Cracks split across it like veins, and the center lines faded to ghostly streaks. Tree branches dipped lower, tangling together above us like the woods were leaning in for a better look. "This doesn't even look like a road anymore," Eric muttered. His voice had that edge, the one that means the joke's over. He wasn't wrong. It felt wrong. My phone had no bars, Mason's had died an hour ago, and Eric's GPS locked up before flashing to some glitchy static screen and quitting for good. We kept going because what else could we do? No pull-offs, no safe spot to turn around. The ditch on either side looked hungry, and the idea of backing up that whole way blind? Forget it. So I told myself it was just a detour, a story for later. But then I noticed the trees. At first, it didn't register, just this itch in my brain like something was off. Then I slowed for a tight curve and saw it. Every tree along the road had been cut. Not chopped down, marked. Deep angled slashes carved into the bark at chest height, all slanting the same way. Not random damage, deliberate. Every single one facing the road. Trail markers? Eric leaned closer to his window, squinting. For what? Mason said from the back. There's no trail here. He was right. Nothing but an unbroken wall of trees on both sides. And those marks? They weren't hiker scratches. They were too uniform, too neat. Someone had walked this entire stretch with a blade and a reason. Nobody said much after that. The road squeezed tighter, like the forest was trying to swallow it whole. Branches scraped the roof and clawed at the sides of the car, a dry screeching sound that made my jaw ache. I rolled the windows up, but it didn't stop the noise. Then, like someone flipped a switch, the pavement ended. No warning. Just dirt and weeds swallowing the tires. Up ahead, a sign leaned crooked in the brush, its paint peeled down to bare wood in places. One word still readable in flaking black letters. Marrow. None of us had heard of it. Probably a ghost town, Mason said. He was aiming for casual, but his laugh sounded wrong. Thin and sharp. Could be cool to check out. I should have turned the car around. I should have scraped it up in the trees and gotten us out of there. But the road was too narrow, and the thought of reversing that whole winding stretch blind made my stomach twist. So I drove on. Because what else was there to do? The dirt road spilled us into something that might have once been a town square. 4, maybe 5 buildings sagged around an open patch of ground like they'd been holding their breath for decades. The biggest one still had a sign hanging by a single rusted chain, Marrow General. Its windows were nothing but black holes. The others weren't much better. Roofs collapsing in slow motion, porches caving like soft bones. This is sick, Eric said, already unbuckling. His boots hit the dirt before I could respond. Wait. I called after him, trying to sound calm and failing. Look, the ground was soft from old rain, muddy enough to hold impressions. Footprints, dozens of them, not scattered, organized, all heading in the same direction, toward the buildings. Every single one pointing in, none leading out. Guys, I said, my throat dry, we need to leave now. They didn't listen. Mason was already grinning, swinging his door open. 2 minutes, he said. You'll live. Then they were gone, boots crunching toward the general store. The door didn't even creak when Mason pushed it open. It just swung wide like it had been waiting for them. I stayed in the car. My hands were welded to the steering wheel, knuckles white. I kept flicking my eyes between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. That's when I saw it. Movement between the trees, maybe 30 feet back. Something pale slipping from trunk to trunk. Then another shape farther down, too quick to get a good look, but there, definitely there. My pulse went haywire. I cracked the window an inch and yelled, Eric, Mason, now. Silence. I climbed out. My legs felt rubbery, like they might fold if I moved too fast. I took one step toward the store when I heard it. A sound I can still hear if I close my eyes. Wet. Slow. A chewing noise, like teeth tearing through raw meat. It came from the woods, behind me. I turned. Shapes stepped out of the tree line. Not people. Not anything I knew. Their limbs were too long, joints bending in ways that made my stomach drop. Their skin was pale, stretched too thin, almost gray, like paper left in the sun too long. Where faces should have been were pits, and the mouths, God, torn too wide, stuffed with teeth that didn't belong there. They didn't rush. They didn't have to. They just drifted closer, slow and certain, like they already knew how this ended. I ran for the store. Inside was worse. The smell hit me first, heavy and rotten, thick enough to coat my throat. Shelves sagged under jars filled with things I didn't want to identify. Dark shapes floating in syrup the color of old blood. But that wasn't what froze me. It was the back wall. It wasn't wood, it was skin, stretched tight, nailed across beams like canvas. Words carved into it, deep and uneven, still wet in places. I didn't read them. I couldn't. Eric appeared at my side, whispering, "We have to go." His face looked wrong, like it had been drained of color. The chewing sound was inside now. I didn't look for the source. I grabbed Eric's arms, screamed for Mason, and bolted. We tore across the dirt. Mason came out of nowhere, sprinting full tilt, eyes wild. He dove into the back seat just as something gray and long-fingered scraped the car door. I didn't check the mirror. I didn't breathe. I slammed the gear into drive and floored it. Trees whipped past, dirt spraying like smoke. When the pavement finally reappeared under the tires, I could have cried. But I didn't stop until I saw lights, a gas station glowing like heaven on the county line. I was 24 when it happened, 2 weeks into a solo road trip, winding through the Appalachian backroads that twist like veins across hills older than time itself. I wasn't running from anything, at least, not on purpose. I just liked the quiet. Most people hate driving these roads after dark. Not me. I lived for it. No traffic, no chatter, just a 2-lane stretch cutting through endless forest. The town scattered through these hills shut down early, so by nightfall the world felt abandoned. My headlights were the only sign of life carving into that black void. I didn't even have a real plan, no final destination, just the hum of the tires and that eerie little thrill of moving through a sleeping world. By the time the dash clock blinked past midnight, I was somewhere deep in West Virginia. No GPS, no signal. Not that it mattered. I'd done this before. Tank full, cooler of water in the back seat. I told myself I was fine. Isolation wasn't a problem. It was the whole point. What I didn't know, what didn't even cross my mind, was that something else out there might want the same thing. It started simple. Too simple, really. Just a shadow in the road. I barely caught it before the high beams hit. For half a second, I thought deer, common out here. But the shape wasn't right. Too upright. And it didn't flinch. It didn't bolt like a deer should. It just stood there. A person. I slammed the brakes. Hard. The seatbelt punched into my chest. Tires screaming as the car fishtailed before stopping maybe 20 feet from the figure. They didn't move. I rolled the window down halfway, heart pounding like a war drum. "Hey, you okay?" Nothing. They stood in the glow of my headlights, head angled down like they were staring at their shoes. Arms hanging at their sides, loose and limp, like someone had unplugged them. Something about the way they stood. It wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't shock. It felt rehearsed. "Need help?" I tried again, voice cracking just enough for me to hate myself for it. That's when the head lifted, slow, painfully slow, like the neck hinge was rusted, and my stomach turned. Their face looked pale under the beams, almost gray like paper left out in the rain. The eyes were wrong, too dark, too wide, as if someone had stretched the black part too far. And the clothes? Jesus. They looked like they'd been peeled out of an old sepia photograph. Loose brown pants held up by suspenders, shirt buttoned straight to the throat. Before I could speak again, the mouth opened. "Water," they said. The voice didn't fit. Too deep, drawn out, vibrating low like a subwoofer hum. It wasn't loud. but it filled the car. Yeah, I stammered, fumbling like an idiot. Hang on, I've got some in the car. I turned, grabbed a bottle from the passenger seat. Took maybe 2 seconds. When I looked back, they were gone. The road ahead was empty. No footsteps, no figure. Just asphalt stretching into nowhere. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. Told myself they'd wandered off into the woods. That made sense, right? People do weird things when they're dehydrated. Except the tree line was only a few feet from the shoulder. Thick, close. And I didn't hear a single branch snap. That's when I heard something else. Footsteps. Behind the car. I twisted so fast the seatbelt nearly strangled me. Just in time to see a shape peel away from the tree line. Another man. Taller. Thinner. His arms hung too low, almost brushing his knees. And his grin, God, his grin, stretched too wide across his face, teeth catching the light like jagged glass. And then he moved, not walked, ran straight at me. I didn't think, just slammed the door, jammed the shifter into gear and floored it. Gravel spit like gunfire as the tires clawed for traction. The engine roared so loud it felt like a scream. I didn't dare look back until the road curved. When I did, they were coming out of the trees. Not one, not two, at least 6. Figures slipping from the shadows like they'd been waiting there all along. Faces pale and blank, all turning toward me as I tore past. My hands locked on the wheel, muscles cramping from the grip. I drove like hell, eyes laser fixed on the twisting ribbon of blacktop, every nerve screaming. Didn't blink, didn't breathe. Just prayed for lights, a house, anything. But there was nothing. Minutes bled together. Maybe hours. I thought maybe I'd lost him, that maybe, somehow, it was over. And I glanced at the rearview mirror and froze. He was in the back seat, the first one. The man in suspenders, sitting perfectly still, eyes locked on mine in the glass. I slammed the brakes so hard the car spun sideways. Tires shrieked, smoke pouring from the asphalt. My door flew open and I stumbled out, knees buckling like wet paper. Behind me, the rear door clicked. He stepped out. Soon, he said, that voice rolling like distant thunder. You'll join us. I ran. I didn't look back. Just bolted straight down the center of the road, lungs tearing, arms flailing, when I saw headlights crest the hill ahead. A pickup barreled toward me, brakes screaming as it skidded sideways. The driver leaned out. Big guy, beard, flannel shirt. Jesus Christ, what the hell's going on? I tried to answer, but words broke apart in my mouth. He didn't argue, just jerked a thumb. Get in, I'll follow you out. There was a pistol on his dashboard. That was the only reason I didn't collapse right there. We drove 30 miles of blacktop winding through the hills, every shadow twitching at the edges of my vision. My eyes kept flicking to the side mirrors, half expecting to see those faces spilling out of the trees. When I finally rolled into my driveway, I jumped out and checked the car like a lunatic. Back seat, floor, trunk, empty. I almost laughed, almost, until I saw the folded paper sitting on the dash. You will never leave these hills. Before I could even breathe, the porch light clicked on. My mom stepped out holding a towel. The dog puked, she said, like the night wasn't breaking my brain in half. I followed her inside, shaking so hard I could hear my own teeth click. The next morning, she said something that hollowed me out. Oh, yeah, she said casually, tying her hair up. Some guy came by for you earlier. Weird guy, really thin, deep voice. Didn't say much, but he left this. She handed me an envelope. Inside was one sentence scrawled in jagged black ink. You're one of us now. I was 29 when it happened. My husband and I had talked for years about taking those long, aimless drives. We wanted quiet. We planned it for weeks, packed light, and left before sunrise on a Friday in early September. That first morning felt exciting, like we were finally doing something we'd always talked about. The first couple of days were everything we'd hoped for. Those endless rolling hills that looked like blue waves stacked on each other, diners with menus written in faded marker, and pie that someone's grandmother probably baked an hour ago. Even the gas stations felt friendlier, like people still cared where you were headed and what you were doing out there. By the third day, we were hooked on the back roads. I was the one who suggested ditching the highway completely. The GPS showed this thin, gray line cutting across 2 states, and I can't even remember the name now. Something like County Route 17, but it looked like the kind of road you only find if you zoom in too far. It promised a scenic route. I thought that sounded perfect. 5 minutes after turning off, the pavement narrowed and started showing its age. Cracks spiderwebbed through it, patched half-heartedly with strips of gravel. The trees crowded in on both sides, leaning so close their branches brushed the roof now and then, like they wanted the road back. For a while it was fine, peaceful even, but after 20 miles I noticed something I didn't understand until later. The silence. Not quiet, silence. It hit me when we pulled over so I could stretch. I stepped out expecting to hear the usual country noise. Cicadas, crickets, birdsong, maybe the wind stirring the leaves. Instead, all I heard was the soft tick of the engine cooling down. No breeze, no rustling, not even a distant insect. It was like the world had gone flat, like someone had muted everything. My husband cracked a joke about nature giving us the cold shoulder, but I couldn't shake this weird heaviness. I kept looking at the trees like I expected something to step out. 10 more miles, and the road started coiling into sharp switchbacks. We hadn't seen another car in over an hour when it appeared, an old white sedan, crawling along like it didn't care about time. Its back window was so fogged and grimy, you couldn't see a thing inside. We caught up fast. My husband eased out to pass, but as soon as he did, the sedan swerved left, cutting us off. Not wildly, just enough to make it clear we weren't getting by. He dropped back, tried again, same thing, smooth, controlled, like whoever was driving wanted to make a point. Maybe they're drunk, I said, but I didn't believe it. Drunk drivers don't anticipate your moves that perfectly. On the third try, the sedan drifted to the right and slowed to a crawl, like it was finally giving up. My husband gunned it. I told myself not to look as we passed. Of course I did. The driver was hunched so far forward over the wheel, it didn't look right, not like someone leaning in to see the road better. This was bent and twisted, like their spine had given up on sitting normally. Their face was in shadow, but I saw pale skin, too pale. When we pulled ahead, I checked the mirror. Empty road. Not fell back behind a curve. Empty. Just gone. I told myself there had to be a turnoff we missed, but the next 20 minutes proved me wrong. That road was a curling ribbon through the hills, no side roads, no driveways. Then the town started. The first sign said Glenford in peeling white paint. The wood leaned like it was too tired to hold itself up. The town looked worse, a cluster of houses slumped together like they were trying to keep each other from falling, windows covered in plastic sheeting, porches sagging into the dirt. No cars, no people. We drove slow, waiting for something, anything, a curtain twitch, a dog barking. Nothing. Even the gas station on the far edge was boarded up. Its ice chest flipped and rusted, weeds curling through the hinges like fingers. "Keep going," I said. My husband just nodded. The next stretch climbed higher, switchbacks stacked so tight it felt like we were spiraling. The branches scraped harder now, clawing at the glass like they wanted in. I started counting curves to keep my brain from unraveling. 10 bends in. I saw it. The Y sedan, parked sideways across the road. Driver's door wide open. My husband jerked the wheel and swerved around it, tires spitting gravel. I twisted in my seat just in time to see the driver sitting in the ditch, knees pulled tight to their chest, rocking slow like a child. Then their heads snapped up. Even from that distance, I saw the eyes. Too wide, too bright. They caught the light like glass. Their mouth was moving, fast, forming words I couldn't hear. "Drive," I said. My voice cracked. "Drive, now." He didn't need convincing. For a while, I told myself that was it. Just a weird story we'd tell later, laugh about over drinks. Then the GPS went black. Not signal loss, dead. My husband grabbed his phone, dead too. Mine wouldn't turn on either, and I'd charged it that morning. Then the road split without warning. 2 lanes, one left, one right. No signs, no markers. He picked left. The trees opened into a clearing, and there it was. A building slumped in the center. It might have been a church once. The steeple was snapped in half and lying across the roof like a broken limb. Every window was blacked out. We slowed without even thinking about it. That's when I saw the door, carved up with deep lines, tangled and jagged like someone had tried to write something but couldn't get it right. Not letters, not numbers, just shapes, stacked and repeated. "Don't stop," I said. My throat was so tight the words barely made it out. He hit the gas. The car lurched forward, then died, like something had ripped its heart out. We sat there, breathing loud in the dead air. Then came the sound, soft at first, like something dragging through leaves. Footsteps from behind the building. Then, from the trees, more of them, circling. I looked at him. He looked at me. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. If anyone stepped out of those woods, we weren't leaving. I slammed the lock button hard enough to bruise my thumb. He twisted the key again. Nothing. The footsteps grew louder, slower, deliberate. Then the driver's door yanked outward, hard. The lock should have held. It didn't. Something had popped it. My husband threw his shoulder into the door and shoved it shut. I hit the lock again just as something curled over the top of the glass. And gray with dirt, nails splintered down to nothing, pressing so hard it left smears. The engine roared to life like nothing had happened. My husband floored it. Gravel shot like sparks under the tires. I didn't look back, not once. We didn't stop until we hit a highway. The first few hours honestly felt like we nailed the road trip vibe. I even remember thinking, this is perfect. This is exactly the break I needed. Evan was the one who convinced me to take this route. More scenic, less traffic, he promised. And at first, yeah, he wasn't wrong. For the first 100 miles, it was gorgeous. Ridges rolling off into forever. Tree lines so dense they looked like green walls, and valleys carved so deep it felt like the earth had just decided to split open in spots. But you know how sometimes beauty starts to feel oppressive, like too much of a good thing? After 5 hours of nothing but curves and trees and the occasional glimpse of sky, it started to weigh on me. Like, I couldn't shake the thought that we were driving into something instead of through it. And then the road changed. Suddenly at first. The hills stretched taller, the curves tighter, but after a while it felt like the trees were closing in, swallowing the road. No breaks, no gaps, just this tunnel of trunks and bare branches. My phone map had frozen about an hour ago. At first, I didn't care. No big deal, I'll reload it in a minute. But now it was just this stubborn gray screen pretending to load. I kept poking it like that would help. No bars, no little dots of hope, just dead silence in the middle of nowhere. Evan was still doing that thing where you act like everything's fine even though it clearly isn't. Every 10 minutes like clockwork, he'd say, "We'll hit the main road soon," like if he said it enough, the universe would cooperate. But I could hear the edge in his voice. And then the gas light came on. I swear the whole car felt heavier when it did. Like the silence wrapped tighter around us. I kept waiting for Evan to make a joke, something like, "Guess we're running on prayers now." But he didn't. He just gripped the wheel harder, knuckles so white they looked like they'd pop. That's when we saw it, the sign. It was nailed to this splintered post that looked like it had been standing since before roads were invented. Paint almost gone, just these sad flakes clinging on. But the letters were still there. Cold Hollow, grocery, 1 mile ahead. Evan sat up like a kid hearing an ice cream truck. "Finally," he muttered. I could drink a gallon of water right now. I didn't say anything, but I felt relief too. 1 mile? Sure, we could crawl a mile if we had to. The letters were faded and the arrow was crooked, but it was hope. And hope feels like oxygen when you're running out of gas. So we drove. 1 mile passed, then 2, then 3, and nothing. No grocery store, no houses, not even a freaking mailbox. Just roads stretching ahead like some cruel joke. Maybe we missed it, I said. Tried to sound calm. My voice cracked anyway. Evan didn't answer. Didn't slow down. The trees were pressing in tighter now, branches curling overhead like claws, and the light outside, it wasn't dark yet, but it was that weird gray hour where everything looks off, like reality has bad lighting. I opened my mouth to suggest turning around. God, I should have pushed harder, but that's when I saw it, the house. It sat a little ways back, crouched behind a thin screen of bare trees. Porch sagging like a broken spine, roof dipping inward, all the windows shut tight with these faded curtains that made my stomach turn for some reason. A gravel driveway slashed through weeds high enough to hide a person, and by the mailbox, a rusted thing leaning so hard it looked drunk, was the sign. Cold Hollow Grocery, 1 mile ahead. The exact same one. I twisted in my seat to watch the house vanish as we passed. That's the same sign, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Probably another one, Evan said. Advertising, except it wasn't just the sign. It was the same house. I didn't say that part out loud, but I knew he was thinking it too. Another mile crawled by. Nothing. Another after that. Still nothing. The gas needle was buried so deep in the red I could practically hear it mocking us. When the dashboard chimed, it sounded like it was right inside my skull. I wiped my palms on my jeans and felt the damp cling. And then, God help me, we saw the house again. Same porch, same busted mailbox, same weeds like seagrass around it, same sign nailed at the same sad tilt. Only this time, the last light had drained out of the sky. My pulse was punching through my throat. Evan let out this sharp laugh that scared me more than the house did. Guess we're going in circles, he said, but his voice cracked at the end. We weren't. We hadn't turned once. This road was a straight shot with no forks, no turnoffs, no exits. I didn't say that. I didn't have to. The silence in the car said everything. Then the engine sputtered. You know that sound when a soda straw reaches the bottom of the glass? That desperate gurgle? That's what it sounded like. Our car, sucking the last drop of life out of the tank. We coasted for a few more yards before it died completely. The trees on either side were just black now, the sky a deep bruise overhead. I sat there, listening for something, anything, a plane, a distant engine, power lines humming, nothing, just quiet, so thick it pressed on my ears. Evan tried the ignition twice. Dead. He slammed the wheel, muttered something sharp, then froze. There, he said, his voice strange. Look, I followed his gaze. Through the trees, maybe 50 yards in, a glow pulsed faintly. Not headlights. Not fireflies. Too steady for that. It looked like a lantern. My stomach turned over. Could be a house, Evan said. His voice was calm in that fake way people use when they're lying to themselves. He was already opening the door. We grabbed our phones, like idiots, like they were magic talismans, and headed into the trees. The forest swallowed us immediately. Branches clawed at my jacket. Roots grabbed my boots. Every step felt loud. Wrong, like the ground was amplifying it just to make sure something heard us. The glow grew brighter until we broke into a clearing. The building was small and squat, tilting like it was too tired to stand. A store, or what had been a store decades ago. The sign above the door was rotted, letters barely hanging on, but I could still read them. Old Hollow Grocery. My mouth went dry. The light wasn't a trick, it was real. warm, flickering, spilling out from inside like a candle in a grave. "Someone's here," Evan whispered. We stepped closer. The door hung crooked, hinge rusted to hell. Inside, the air smelled thick, dust layered over something sour, something old. Shelves lined the walls, their contents like museum pieces. Cans with labels curling like dead skin. Boxes caved in like collapsed lungs. And behind the counter stood a man. He didn't move when we came in. Didn't speak. Just stood there, still as a cutout, watching us with eyes that seemed too dark to reflect the light. His clothes looked wrong. Suspenders over a yellowed shirt, pants worn to threads at the knees, and his smile. God, that smile. It was carved in, too wide, too permanent. "Evenin'," he said finally, voice dry as paper scraping wood. "Long way from home, ain't ya?" I tried to answer. Car trouble, low gas, just need help. But the words stuck. My tongue felt thick. My teeth felt loose. He tilted his head, bird-like, like he was listening for something far away. Then he said, soft as dust, "You won't find your way by road. Not now." Before I could ask what that meant, the shadows behind him moved. One figure stepped forward, then another, and another. Faces pale, eyes black, mouths stretched in that same awful smile. Evan's hand clamped on my arm so hard it burned. "We're leaving," he breathed. But it didn't matter. They all heard. We ran. Branches tore at us, ripped skin, yanked hair. The ground cracked underfoot, roots snagging like hands. I heard footsteps fast, too many, but I didn't look back. Couldn't. My lungs were on fire when the trees broke and the road appeared like a miracle. The car was there, dead a minute ago, now looking alive as anything. Evan threw himself behind the wheel, twisted the key, and the engine roared like a beast waking up. I don't care how, I don't care why. He floored it, tires screaming, gravel spitting like gunfire. We didn't speak. Not then, not for 50 miles. When real lights appeared, gas stations, motels, towns with names I recognized, I almost cried. The next morning, I checked every map I could find, traced every road. There's no town called Cold Hollow. So I did what I thought might help. I took a week off work, threw some clothes and snacks in the backseat, and just drove. No real plan, just this idea in my head that I needed space and silence. Appalachia sounded perfect. Mountains, endless roads, no one breathing down my neck or asking what's wrong. Just me in the car. I left before sunrise, figuring 2 long days of driving would get me to the little rental cabin I found online. Day 1, pretty uneventful. Highways and chain restaurants, podcasts keeping me company while I counted mile markers. I even convinced myself I was starting to feel lighter. But the second day, that's when it all shifted. The roads changed first. No more straight, flat asphalt. Suddenly it was all rolling hills, thick forests, and curves sharp enough to make my stomach lurch. Beautiful in that postcard way, but isolating too. These were the kinds of roads where you could drive 20 minutes without passing another car. Honestly, that's what I wanted. Pure isolation. But in the moment, it felt heavier than I expected. Around late afternoon, I stopped for gas at this little station that looked like it hadn't changed since the 60s. 2 pumps, paint peeling off the walls, a hand-painted open sign barely clinging to the door. The guy behind the counter didn't even look up when I walked in. I paid and asked him the best way to get to Blue Ridge. He shrugged, chewing on something, and muttered, "Plenty of ways," then jabbed a finger toward the road I was already on. "Keep to the main." I should have listened, but no. I looked at my GPS and saw a little gray line, a shortcut that would save me 30 minutes, and thought, why not? The road wound deep into the mountains, a tight little thread twisting through green nothingness. The first few miles were fine. The asphalt looked a little cracked, but nothing major. Then the cracks grew, spiderwebbing everywhere. The shoulders shrank until there were none. And then, without me even noticing the moment it happened, The bars on my phone disappeared. Zero signal. I told myself it was fine, just a road, no big deal. But something felt wrong almost immediately. The forest closed in like a tunnel. Trees leaning so close it was like they were pressing against the glass. No houses, no signs, no sound but the hum of my engine. And the road. God, the road. Looked like it hadn't seen a county truck in decades. Moss crawled up from the edges, asphalt eaten alive by green. For a few seconds, I caught myself checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone behind me. But it was always empty, just the same cracked pavement dissolving into distance. Then I saw the house. It came out of nowhere, hunched at the edge of the road like something that had been left there to die a long time ago. Roof sagging in the middle, shingles curling like dead leaves. Every window was boarded from the inside, like someone wanted to keep something out, or in. And in the yard was a swing. Rusted chains, wooden seat, barely moving. Just a slow sway like the air itself was pushing it. I slowed down without even realizing I'd done it. And that's when I saw what was sitting on it. Not a kid, not a mannequin, a doll. Big, almost the size of a child. Filthy gingham dress, fabric stiff with dirt. Its head lolled to the side at an angle, no neck, real or fake, should bend. But the eyes, that's what I can't get out of my head. Glass, but cloudy. Like they'd gone blind a long time ago. I didn't stop, didn't even look twice. I just hit the gas and told myself it didn't matter. Appalachia's full of weird stuff like that. About 10 minutes later, I hit a fork in the road. 2 dirt paths splitting like broken branches. My GPS, still dead. Just a blank map mocking me. And that's when I saw the sign, not official, not even metal. Just a plank of wood nailed to a post. Words carved deep and rough, like someone hacked them out with a knife. Things, keep left, that was it. No mile marker, no left to town or right closed. Just those 2 words. Something about it made my skin crawl. Why phrase it like that? Why not give me an actual reason? I sat there too long, engine idling, staring at those words. The trees felt closer, like they were listening. So I obeyed. I turned left. The road changed almost immediately. Asphalt gave way to dirt, loose gravel grinding under my tires. The climb got steeper. The forest pressed even tighter, branches clawing overhead. And the light, it was bleeding out of the sky fast, shadows pooling in every dip. No signs, no houses, nothing but the crunch of tires and this growing knot in my gut. I told myself I'd turn around as soon as I found a wide spot, just a few more bends. Then I saw lights, 2 of them. Faint, swinging like lanterns. I slowed down, heart banging so hard it felt like my ribs were rattling. The lights moved, closer together than apart, like whoever held them was pacing. And then they stepped into my headlights, 4 figures, barefoot, clothes so old they looked like something out of a history book. Long skirts, frayed overalls, buttoned shirts stained yellow with age. Each one held a lantern, and each wore a mask. Not plastic, not store-bought. These were carved from wood, rough, splintered, with holes hacked out for eyes and mouths. They didn't move. I braked so hard the seatbelt locked across my chest. The high beams washed over those faces, and for 1 second, I wished I hadn't looked. The masks weren't smooth. They were gouged like someone carved them with nails instead of tools. And the mouths, jagged, stretched into grins that didn't belong on anything human. One of them, the tallest, took a step toward me. Then another. That broke me. I slammed the gear shift into reverse, tires screaming against the dirt. The car fishtailed, gravel spitting everywhere. I spun it around so fast I nearly clipped a tree. And when I looked in the rearview mirror, that's when I saw them. More lanterns, dozens, swinging between the trees. Bobbing closer, weaving through the dark, like fireflies from hell. I floored it. Branches whipped the car, scraping metal like nails on bone. My heart hammered so loud I couldn't even hear the engine. When I hit the fork again, I didn't think. I took the right path, crashing through brush so thick it sounded like breaking bones. The road ended in a clearing, a dead end, and in that clearing was a cabin. Small, windowless, squatting in the dirt like it had been waiting. There was a sign nailed to its door. 3 words burned into the wood. Stop the noise. I killed the engine without even realizing I'd done it. Sat there gripping the wheel so tight my fingers ached. The lanterns came, first a few, then more, their glow crawling through the trees like veins of fire. I ducked low, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The first figure stepped into the clearing. Then another and another, masks tilting like they were listening for something. They fanned out, circling the car in silence. One of them dragged its nails along the hood, slow, scraping, like it was testing the sound. Then, tap, right by my face, on the glass. I turned my head, and there it was. A mask, splintered wood, holes black as pits. The mouth moved, just enough for words to leak through. Get out. I don't even remember shifting gears. I just remember the tires screaming, the car jerking forward, branches exploding across the windshield. My name's Cale. I didn't have a reason to take the long route. I've done it too many times. This time, I wanted something different, something quiet. So I punched avoid highways into the GPS and let it do its thing. It gave me a ribbon of back roads curling through the Appalachian Mountains. And when I say curling, I mean curling. Sharp turns stacked on each other like someone tied the road in knots. No gas stations, no lights, barely any signs, just miles of blacktop cutting through hills thick with trees. When I started, it was late afternoon, the kind of light that makes everything feel calm. And at first it was nice, just me, the hum of the tires, and trees so thick they looked stitched together. No cars, no chatter, no white noise. I felt like I'd driven out of the world. Then I noticed how dark it was getting. One of those quick changes where the day doesn't fade, it just drops. I glanced at the dashboard clock. 6:12 p.m. I kept glancing at it because after a while it was still 6:12. 10 minutes later, same. 20 minutes, same. I laughed at first. I mean, come on, old car clock glitching out, not a big deal. But when I checked my phone, it said the same thing, 6:12. And that's when this little prickle went up my neck. Because, okay, maybe the car clock's busted, but my phone too? Weird. I should have turned around. I didn't. I told myself it was some daylight saving bug or maybe the mountains were messing with GPS time. People post about that stuff online, right? So I kept going. The gas gauge dropped to half, then a quarter. Still no sign of life. Not a porch light hiding between the trees. Not a single mailbox. Just the road folding in on itself over and over until it felt like I was looping the same mile again and again. Then I saw them, 2 red taillights ahead of me, weaving through the curves. I can't even tell you the relief I felt. After an hour of nothing, there was another person out here. Proof I wasn't alone. So I sped up, except the lights didn't get closer. No matter how much I pressed the gas, they stayed the same distance ahead, floating in the dark, like they were tethered to me by a string. I pushed harder. Tires squealed. My heart started doing this fast, fluttery thing because it didn't make sense. They weren't speeding away, they were just unreachable. And then they vanished. One blink they were there, the next, gone. I slowed down, crept around the bend with my high beam slicing through the trees. That's when I saw it. A car, pulled over on the shoulder. Same taillights. Dark now. Both doors wide open, like whoever had been inside bailed mid-thought. I didn't stop. I didn't even tap the brake. My hands clenched the wheel so tight they ached, and I pressed down on the gas like the road was trying to swallow me whole. That's when the fuel light came on, and now panic was chewing at me because I'd been driving God knows how long and there hadn't been a single town, not even a sign, until there was, out of nowhere, like it had been waiting for me. This weathered wooden sign leaned on a post like it had arthritis. White paint peeling so bad it looked like skin. 2 words, barely readable. Gasset Hollow, 2 miles. 2 miles. I could make that. I told myself there'd be something, anything. A store, a pump, a human being. My tank had maybe 10 miles left, tops. So I turned. The road narrowed until the trees were practically pressing their faces against my windows. Branches scraped my mirrors like fingernails. My headlights dug a weak tunnel through the dark, and the GPS stopped talking, which shouldn't have mattered, but somehow did. Then the trees broke, and there it was, what used to be a town, maybe 50 years ago. A few buildings hunched together like they were hiding from something. Roofs sagging, windows punched out, siding warped like melted plastic. Not a single light anywhere, but I saw what looked like a gas station, or what was left of one. 2 pumps rusted to the point where they barely looked like pumps, vines twisting up around them like veins. The sign overhead was stripped bare, nothing left but rusted hooks dangling like teeth. I pulled up and killed the engine. Gravel crunched under my boots when I stepped out, and the sound felt loud, like it didn't belong in the air. I held my phone like some kind of security blanket, even though it said no service in letters so big, they might as well have said, "You're screwed." The air was heavy, not just humid, heavy. Like it had weight, like it was pressing on my skin. I walked to the station door, or what was left of it. The frame sagged, glass long gone. Inside, shelves lay in jagged heaps. The floor was a mess of splintered wood and yellowed paper curling at the edges. A cash register squatted on the counter, keys pried off, drawer ripped out. I turned to go back. Slow steps. Like moving too fast might wake something up. And then I saw him. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat of my car. For a second, my brain just stalled, like maybe it's a reflection, maybe it's nothing. But then he moved, head tilting toward me, slow, deliberate, like he wanted me to see. The roofline cut his face in half, but I saw his hand. Long fingers sliding over the wheel, resting like they belonged there. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world felt pinned. Then he smiled. I saw that before anything else. Teeth catching the weak glow of my phone, sharp and too white in the dark. I ran. Didn't think, didn't yell, just bolted for the trees. Behind me, my engine roared to life. My engine. Headlights detonated across the clearing, washing the trunks in gold as I dove into the woods. Branches whipped my arms, thorns shredded my jeans. I ran until my lungs felt like they were filled with fire, until my throat was raw, and still I kept going because I could hear gravel spraying somewhere behind me. Then, silence. No headlights, no tires. Just the forest swallowing everything. I didn't stop, not until the ground tilted down and a road unrolled below me. Not the same road, a real one, alive with cars sliding past like silver fish. I stumbled out, waving like a lunatic. A sedan slowed, and this woman leaned out, her face creased with worry. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, because the truth was too heavy to explain. She drove me to the next town. I didn't go back for the car that night.